Hello and welcome everyone to our Wednesday edition of Business Mathematics. It is what I would call Math Friday. It is our last math day of the week. And we have a lot to cover today, but I would potentially venture to say that this topic might be a little bit easier compared to supply and demand. All right, so I'm just going to toss that up there a little bit, bada boom. So let's talk housekeeping things as the rest of the students roll in. I'm just going to bounce back over into our Moodle page here. So first things first, we talked about this on Monday, and that is that we have the first assignment coming up due on the 24th of September. So the Dropbox is open for you until midnight on September 24th. So that is all the instructions and everything you need to do are here. Remember that whatever question you decide to do from the assignment, make sure that you tell me which one you'd like to do in the group choice part of assignment number 1. Now, if you're having issues with the first assignment or want to ask some questions, let's save that for the end of class today. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is we do have test number 1 coming up very soon. So that will be coming up next week on Wednesday. So I will be available during our class time, which is from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. I'm going to update these times. So you're going to have a 6-hour window. So we're going to have 2 hours after and 2 hours before. So the test number 1 will actually be available from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. In our Pacific Standard Time. And if you want to get an idea of what test number 1 is going to look like, then I have this practice test number 1 here. You can click on this one. And maybe over the weekend, it would be a good idea to just work through these questions and see if you're able to come up with some solutions to these questions. There is a solution key posted here for you as well. So if you're curious about checking your solutions, that is here and available for you as well. Okay. So just have those 2 things on your radar. So first assignment due Friday at midnight. Test number 1 next week on Wednesday. It's open from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Most students will try to write the test in between the hours of 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock because I will be available for you if you have any questions or concerns. All right, so that's the housekeeping stuff. Let's move back to our merchandising section. So today's big topic for you to read and to make some notes about was merchandising. So what we'd like to do today is talk a little bit about markups, markdowns, sale pricing, how we, might allocate some of our selling price for overhead expenses, such as wages, or allocating some of our selling price for profit. So these kinds of things are the topic of discussion today. And really, when it comes, I think, to working in merchandising, I find this very, very intuitive. So I'm hoping that working through a couple examples with you today will bring out that intuition and allow you just to kind of step back and think about how to do these from a more intuitive kind of point. So I'll give you a few moments here just in case you need to copy down our first question. All right, so don't mind me just having a little snack along the way. Okay, so in our first example, and you can let me know how kind of the pre-reading went in the chat. Hopefully you had a chance to go into the online version of the textbook and watch through some of those videos. I know I put in a couple extra videos on the Moodle shell as well with a different presenter, just in case you wanted a different point of view for these questions as well. But in our first question, we're going to assume that it costs us $4.10. And instead of produce, maybe let's just say cost to purchase. Okay, so there's this interesting relationship between what we would sometimes call the net price and list price and what we call a trade discount. So the first formula that we want to spend a little bit of time with is just making sure that we understand how to apply a trade discount. Yeah, so Alexander has put the formula up for us in the chat, and I will put up the alternate formula in the chat as well, and that is that the cost to the retailer can sometimes be thought of as like a suggested retail price times 1 minus the trade discount as well. So there's two, I would say, kind of equally acceptable formulations for this particular question, and you can use whichever one makes sense, you know, based on the question. Sometimes the net price, so I tend to use C equals S times 1 minus D because sometimes we need to use the net price as the cost in a follow-up question. So that's why I sometimes favor the alternate form of this formula. So we're going to assume that there's a cost to purchase this item, which we're going to call a widget. We're going to assume essentially that the list price is $4.10. And let's also assume there was a trade discount of 13% applied to the suggested retail price or the suggested selling price. And so our goal is to try to figure out what is the suggested selling price from our supplier. All right, so we can kind of, as we start to finish copying down and start to think about the relationship between our retailer and our supplier, this is, I think, really nicely illustrated. If you've ever worked at a winery, for example, quite often we have a specific price that we might set for the direct to customer pricing. So if I have somebody that comes into the tasting room in my winery, they have a specific price, like let's say it's $25 to purchase this bottle of wine. But what happens in the background is sometimes we have other people, like restaurants, for example, that would like to bring our wine into the restaurant, and they're going to get a discounted price. They're going to get some kind of trade discount, and this is often called hospitality pricing. They get a trade discount on the actual face value price of that wine. So that's what we're doing right now. We're assuming that there was some kind of suggested selling price, and we are going to apply a trade discount to figure out this suggested selling price. So we know that our cost, yeah, so I think Alexander has the idea here. So we're looking at a cost of $4.10. We're trying to determine our selling price or alternatively the net price, and we have a discount of 13%. Yeah, so it goes in and looks like this. Okay, now from here, I might want to just follow the order of operations, and I might want to do this subtraction first. That's not right. So this would be 0.87. And then I could divide both sides by 0.87 to obtain the suggested selling price from our supplier. Oh, I see what you did, Alexander. You put in the $4.10 as the list price, or as the what happened here? That looks weird. You put it in as the net price. Sorry, what, did I have these backwards? I might have these backwards. This might be my fault. So the cost to purchase is actually the net price. I'm sorry. So this is my fault, not yours, Alexander. So I had the terminology backwards. So the cost to the retailer is the same thing as the net price, and the suggested sale price from my supplier is the same thing as what we call the list price in the textbook. Okay, so that was my fault, and I apologize. So the suggested retail price from my supplier should always be higher than what the actual cost is for me to purchase that item as a business, right? It doesn't really make sense if I would like to sell this item. I don't want to bring it in at $4.71 and also sell it for $4.71. That's not a very good business model. So I'm hoping that the suggested retail price is higher than what my net price is or what my cost is for that item. So when finding the trade discount value, so like, so Jason, are you asking a question where we're trying to solve for the trade discount? Is that, so we're trying, yeah, so we're trying to solve for the trade discount. Yeah, typically what you're going to see is that I'm going to round those to 4 decimal places so that when I express it as a percent, it's going to be rounded correctly to 2 decimal places. Yeah, Alexander, that's correct. Yes, that was my fault for just mixing up the terminology. So that's my problem, not yours. So that's how to kind of utilize the trade discount formula. Basically, you're saying, okay, like here's the discount. If I have the suggested price, I can put that in. If I have the cost or the net price, I can put that in. And then it's usually just a matter of using the calculator to do some simplifications. For number 2, now that I know what the cost is as a business owner, let's pretend that I'm the business owner. I know that the cost to me is $4.10. Now, I don't have to listen to what the supplier says. I could mark this $4.10 up as much as I want, right? Or I could put it on sale if I wanted to lose money. It's up to me as a business owner. So in part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to take our cost of $4.10. We're going to mark that up by 24% of the cost. That's going to account for profit, okay? And we're going to take the cost number, find 10% of that, and mark up the cost one more time to account for our overhead expenses. And then this is going to now create a new sell price from the point of view of the business owner. So it may not be the suggested selling price, which we calculated as $4.71. It could be something else. And most of the time it is. So what I want to do in part 2 is play around a little bit with this formula that our new selling price, capital S, should be equal to the cost plus the expenses plus the profit. Yeah, so this is the formula we'd like to use here. And I just want you to be mindful that these capital S's that we're using here may not be the same number. So just be mindful of that. This first one here represents the suggested price by the supplier. And this S down here is going to represent the selling price that the retailer actually sells it at. Okay, so just be mindful of that. That question did come up, and I thought that was a very good question in one of my classes earlier today. Okay, now I think we're in a good place to come back to part 2. And yeah, so I'm gonna talk about that right now, Alexander. So our retailer marks up 24% of cost to account for profit. So we know what the cost is for us. The cost for us is $4.10. And we would like to mark that $4.10 up 2 times. The first dollar amount we're going to add is 24% of the cost. Not 25, 24. Okay, so what I've underlined up here in part 2 says 24% of the cost is going to be my markup that I use for profit. Okay, so I've just written that down in English here. My profit, which is represented by capital P, is 24% of the cost. Or in other words, it is 0.24, 24% of the cost. I'm thinking about the word of as a multiplication, like we saw when we were talking about percentages. And of course, cost we're representing with the capital C in our formulas. So yes, this is a correct setup. And then we want to find 24% of $4.10. We know that the cost to us is $4.10. So let's figure out that number. Megan, the short answer is no. The long answer is if you just put down a final answer without any supporting work, then it's hard for me to give you partial marks if you're incorrect. That's kind of my go-to, that's my philosophy, right? If you're able to kind of look at part 2, write down a couple numbers and get the final answer, you know, as long as I can kind of follow your thoughts, that's enough. But do I care that you write down all of the things? Not really. I'm writing down all of the things so that when you go to study this example, you can see what my thinking looked like. That's totally fine, right? Like if you want to write this without using a formula, all the power to you. I'm not going to. Jason, do we get a mark for the formula even if our answer is wrong? No. And mostly because, well, typically no, because you have a formula sheet. So how do I know you're not just throwing a dart at the formula sheet and then just picking a random formula? Okay, so that's how we calculate capital P. The next thing we need to figure out is how to calculate the value, the numerical number we're going to use for our overhead expenses. So this is a markup. This is a dollar amount that we're going to use that's added to our cost that accounts for expenses. Expenses could be a lot of things. Expenses could be like rent. It could be employees' wages. It could be a pot of money that we use to buy new equipment. So there's lots of things, lots of expenses that might come up in business. And usually we want to account some of our markup to a pot of money that we can use for these expenses. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to underline the information that we need here to calculate capital E. I know that my overhead expenses are going to be 10% of the cost. Yeah, so I'm going to write that down. So E is equal to 10% of the cost. Or E can be thought of as 0.1 times capital C. Yeah, so I think it was Alexander had that in the chat correctly. So 0.1 times $4.10. What is that, 41 cents? Beautiful. So there you go. Whether or not you're using, you know, the letters exactly or not, I'm hoping that you can at least intuitively interpret this, right? You know what the cost is. I'm sure you can calculate 24% of the cost. Otherwise, I'm, you know, probably have a bit of a problem with you in this course. And again, you know, if you know what the cost is, which is $4.10, I'm hoping you can calculate 10% of the cost. So these are all the values that we need to calculate our selling price. Our selling price is, we're going to start at $4.10. We're going to add to that 41 cents. That 41 cents is like our pocket of money we use for expenses. And then we're going to add the little pocket of money here, our 98 cents, to account for the profit. Yeah, so this is all added together. So the selling price that the business decides on is the sum of these numbers, which is $5.49. So notice that this S that we get in part 2 is different than the capital S we get in part 1, because the capital S in part 1 is the supplier's suggested price. And the capital S we get in part 2 is the business's actual selling price. Okay, how is that? Does that make sense? I know it's a little bit long-winded here with, you know, some of the calculations in green and in red here. But one, I want to get you excited for Christmas because that's coming up. So apparently green and red I'm using here for Christmas for some reason. No, it's too hot out to talk about Christmas. It's not, we're not that close. We still have to get through Halloween. Okay, and our last part of this particular example, we want to calculate the rate of markup and the gross profit margin. Now it specifically says, let's use the cost of $4.10, and it says use the new sell price. So whenever we're calculating the rate of markup and the gross profit margin, we want to use the numbers associated with the business, not the numbers associated with the supplier. Okay, so we're going to be using $4.10. That's our cost. We're going to be using $5.49. That's our sell price. And what else do we need? We also need the markup. And the markup is going to be the sum of these two values here. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go ahead and calculate the value of our markup, or how much that costs in dollars. So we've marked up altogether $1.39 for this particular item. So we bring this item in for $4.10. We're going to mark it up by $1.39. And question 3 is now asking us, what's that rate? So if I take the markup, which is $1.39, and I find the ratio of $1.39 to the original cost, that should be the rate of markup. Okay, so let's go ahead and divide those two numbers and see, yeah, we get a not particularly pleasant decimal number. So hopefully this is now going to answer, I think it was Jason's question maybe earlier. So we're just going to take 4 decimal places here. And the reason I take 4 decimal places is now I can convert this to a percentage number that would correctly be rounded to 2 decimal places. So in this particular question, it turns out that our markup rate is 33.9%. Awesome. So now that you have the rate of markup, you can find the gross profit margin in one of 2 ways. You can, in our case, we already know what the markup is in dollars and what the selling price is for this item. So I would say let's use those 2 values because we know what they are. The markup is $1.39 and the selling price is $5.49. So this will come out as a percentage as well. So why could we not use the information from part 2 to add the percentages and equal 20.24 and 0.1? That would let's see, would that be true? Okay, I'm going to let me calculate this percentage first, Megan. And as we are, so I like your question and I want to think about that question for a second. And I'll think about that question as you guys are copying down the second example, okay? Because I think you can probably do something like that, Megan. I think it would work. So for the gross profit margin, I do get 25.32%, somewhere in that neighborhood. Alexander, 25.31 would be acceptable as well. So Jason, I did multiply by 100. It's just right here. So in the step, in the red arrow step, I multiplied by 100. That gives me 33.9% instead of 0.339. Okay, so as you guys copy down the next example here, I'm going to think a little bit more about Megan's question, because I think she's onto something that could potentially be clever. So what do we know? We know the selling price. Okay, I'm going to be talking to myself for a second, so just you can ignore me for a second. So yeah, so I think what you have is technically, what you've said is technically correct. Megan, I think what you said is technically correct. Your method works because we are always multiplying a percent by the cost, 10% of cost, 24% of cost. Yeah, so I can see the algebra from my side, and I can see that that makes sense. Okay, so the ROMU could be quickly calculated, I think, in this way as well. And the reason we're going to be, slightly off from each other, so the reason that you're getting 34 and I might be getting something like 33.9 is probably due to some rounding along the way as well. So Alexander, I wouldn't necessarily call it a new formula, because I do believe it's part of the online textbook. So the online textbook says there's a relationship between the selling price that the company decides on. And that relationship is that if we take the cost per item to bring that item in, and we mark that cost up by the rate of markup, because it is essentially a rate, right? We can think about it almost like applying a tax to the cost. This is the formula that's given in the online textbook. If I take the cost price, in the last example, it was $4.10, and we take our rate of markup, which is 0.339, it should hopefully get us really close to what the actual selling price is. Right, which is $5.49. Was that our sell price? Yeah, perfect. Okay, and so there's a little bit, of obviously it's a little bit of wiggle room. If I put 0.34 in here, I'm going to be, and that's what I believe Megan had suggested was, why don't we just use 0.34? It's, it's close enough that we're not going to be too far out on this side with the selling price, right? Like I said, it's kind of like a matter of we're getting slightly different numbers just based on rounding errors. But that's essentially what the rate of markup is. The rate of markup, you can also think about it as how much percentage you would have to add essentially to the cost to get to the sale price. So yeah, you can think about it like a tax rate as well. Alrighty, so I think we're so awesome. So great questions, guys. And Megan, yeah, that was a really nice noticing. That kind of ties into that alternate formula that I might have shown you in the online textbook. So in our second example, what we are going to do is, what do we got here? We have a cost of a sweater. So the retailer is going to purchase a sweater for $15 from the supplier, and they're going to apply a rate of markup of 112%. Now, this is certainly not unusual to see. There are quite a bit of like clothing items, for example, like especially shoes, they get marked up over 100%, I would say. So it's not unusual to see a really large rate of markup like this. So if we apply a rate of markup of 112%, they're asking us, what is the markup in dollars? And what is the selling price? That's interesting. Okay. So that's part one. Part two, determine the GPM, the gross profit margin. We can do that relatively quickly. And then taking the selling price. Oh, and then we're calculating a sale price. Okay, I think we can kind of intuitively work our way through this one. Yeah, so if you know your rate of markup ratio, which is that the markup in dollars over the cost to us in dollars, that's the rate of markup. So that's one way to kind of start part one of this question. If I know the rate of markup is 112%, that's 1.12. And I'm trying to find the markup in dollars, and I know the cost is $15. So yeah, that's looking pretty good for this first bit. So if I multiply both sides by 15, that should do the trick. That should give us our markup in dollars. So 15 times 1.12 is $16.80. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if it costs us 15 bucks, and the rate of markup is over 100%, I expect my markup in dollars to be more than 15 bucks. So yeah, that makes sense to me. Awesome. So from here, now we want to calculate the selling price. And we had a lovely suggestion in chat, and that was that the selling price that my business will use will be the cost per item plus the amount of money we add to that for the markup. So if our cost is $15 and we know that our markup is $16.80, the selling price to the consumer must be what, $31.80. Boom. Okay, in part two, a couple ways you can calculate the gross profit margin. We've seen that the gross profit margin is equal to the markup in dollars divided by the selling price. So this is one way to get the GPM. Now, if our markup is $16.80 and our selling price is $31.80, we can just divide those two things to get what we want. Yeah, that's what I get as well. I get 52.83%. So that's one way that we can calculate the gross profit margin for this particular question. An alternate way to do it would be to use the rate of markup. So I could also say that the GPM is equal to the, what is it? I think it's rate of markup over 1 plus rate of markup. Is that the formula I want? I think that's the one. Where are my notes at? Yeah, okay. So this one also works. If you happen to know what the rate of markup is, you can always utilize this formula to get the gross profit margin if you don't want to deal with, the markup and selling price in terms of dollars and cents. So I know the rate of markup is 112%. So I can do the following calculation, and hopefully this gives us the gross, close enough to what I would expect the gross profit margin percentage to be. Sweet, yeah, it does come out to be the exact same number for me. So 0.5283 or 52.83%. There you go, a couple different ways to solve number 2 based on the 2 formulas that we know for the gross profit margin. All right, so in part 3 of this question, we're going to take the selling price that we calculated in part 1, which is $31.80. So this is the price, if I'm the business owner, this is the price I'm using to sell to my consumers. And what we're going to do is we're going to mark down this price 25%. So we can think about this as going on a sale for 25% off. And our goal is to figure out the sale price. Yeah, so Junling has a potential answer for us of $23.85. So let's double check that one. And I believe that Alexander has given us the formula we can use, which is that the sale price or the reduced selling price in the textbook is equivalent to our original selling price, capital S, times 1 minus our rate of markdown. So we can think about this as a discount, right? This is a 25% discount on the cost of our sweater. So $31.80, 1 minus 25%. That should, this is kind of the quick way to get us to the reduced selling price. Okay, so let's see if Junling has the correct response here. Beautiful. Yeah, very nice, guys, very nice. Of course, if you go the long way would be to multiply 25% into $31.80 and then do the subtraction, right? And doing the subtraction of 25% should get you to $23.85. That's the longer way to get there. So the formula that we use here is just a little bit of a faster way to get to that reduced answer that we need. Yep, so Megan has it there. Yeah, exactly. So we're really finding what is 75% of 3180. I like that method as well. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing right here. Beautiful. I mean, from the conversation that I'm seeing inside the chat, it feels like there's quite a few of you that are a bit fairly comfortable with these ideas. How do those 2 examples, I think, are probably the harder examples that you're likely to see in the merchandising section. Personally, I find merchandising, once you kind of can wrap your head around the formulas and how they go together, I think merchandising is quite intuitive. But how are you guys feeling in general? Maybe just give me like a little thumbs up or a little yeah, a little oh yeah. Better than the calculus. I thought we were, yeah, no calculus until Monday. We'll save that for Monday. Yeah, GPM is always one I struggle with a little bit too, Megan. I know now how to explain the rate of markup, like that makes sense to me, like that proportion makes sense, but I find the gross profit margin a little bit harder to explain. Yeah, it just feels a little weird. Okay, so that's good news. Let's start working our way. I think I have just these. Yeah, so I have two more examples I'd like to work through. So we're going to work on this one first here. So I'll give you guys a few moments to kind of copy that one down. I like this question. So after you're finished copying the question down, think about what formula from the merchandising section you might want to apply to this question. Yeah, I think that one would work here, Alexander. We just have to be a little bit careful about some of the pieces that we use. But yeah, I generally agree that this is the formula we want to use because we're talking about the cost of an item, we're talking about figuring out the selling price, and we're talking about the markups, right? Our overhead expenses and our profit. On the side, I'm going to use red and green just to calculate some of the other numbers that we need. So I already know what the cost is, right? The cost is $5.75. That's what C is. But what about E? So E is 23% of the cost. So we do know the cost in this case, so we can multiply $5.75 by 0.23. That will give us $1.32 by the looks of it. Yeah, let's round that to 2 decimal places here. And Fiona, you've given us the challenging one. What I consider the challenge here is that capital P, which we're going to do in red here. So capital P is 5% of the selling price, 5% of the sell price. But I don't know what the selling price is yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So the best I can do for capital P is to say that this is 0.05 of S, 0.05 times capital S. All right, so Alexander has the correct suggestion here, and that is, okay, once I start substituting in all of the things I know that the selling price should be equal to the cost, which is $5.75, plus the $1.32 that we're going to add for our expenses, plus the 0.05 times S that we have to add for the profit. And yeah, Jason, that's nice. We have to get rid of this 0.05 S on the right-hand side. Yeah, so we have to do this subtraction. Very nice. This will lead us to 1 takeaway 0.0. So I'm kind of thinking about this as a 1, right? 1 takeaway 0.05 is 0.95. And then adding up these two values here, what do we get? $6, is it $6.07? Does that seem reasonable? $7.07, right? 707? Perfect. Okay, and I'm missing a capital S here. I'm sorry. Let's get that capital S in there. And then our last step would be to divide by our 0.95. 7.44 something. Perfect. 7 point, yeah, that's what it is rounded. So we're gonna just go with $7.44. Boom. So that one's a little bit different because the profit in this case relied on the selling price. But the nice thing is you can kind of maneuver that around and actually make it work, right? So what we ended up doing was saying, okay, well, the cost plus the markup for expenses is $7.07. That should be 95% of the selling price. So that's what I've said here, highlighted, right? So we're going to say $7.07 is 95% of the selling price. So 100% of the selling price should be $7.44. Yeah, there's an example in the textbook, which I think is very good. There's an extra example in the online version of the textbook with something like this as well, if you guys want some more practice with this. Excellent. So it seems like you guys were pretty happy with that one. So let us just work on this last example here. And that should be good enough for the examples I want to show you guys. That, I mean, if you're comfortable with these kinds of merchandising questions, we don't really get much harder than this. So in our final example of class today, we're going to apply two trade discounts, one after another. So Alexander has the right idea. You're just missing the capital L here, right? So, but yes, we are going to utilize that formula. Okay, so our net price or the cost should be equal to the list price or the suggested retail price times our two discounts, right? 1 minus D1, 1 minus D2. That's where we're going to start. Okay, so determine the cost. So we could say, you know, either way we write this, maybe I'll use Alexander's formula today. So the net price, or, you know, I would write this as the cost is equal to the suggested retail price times 1 minus D1, 1 minus D2. I think that is an acceptable formulation for this. This is also an acceptable formulation. Okay, we know that we're trying to calculate the net price. We're trying to calculate the cost for us as the business owner. We know that the list price is $75. That's the suggested retail price. And we have two discounts. Doesn't matter what order we apply them in. Let's maybe put our 3% first and our 5% second. And then it's just a little bit of a chug through the calculator. And yeah, Jinling, I believe you have the correct answer here. I get $69.11. Perfect. So check, we have calculated the cost to the retailer. Now the follow-up question is, you know, most of the time in real life, I don't care, you know, I want to make this more efficient on the back end. So I don't really want to give two discounts one after another and try to explain how that works to business owners. Typically what we're going to do is we're going to try to combine these two discounts into a singular discount and then give our business owners that singular trade discount. So what trade discount could we give to our businesses that would be equal to our 3% and 5% discounts? I hope it's not. I was like, okay. I was like, I hope it's not 92%. That seems really high. I mean, I would definitely take that trade discount from you, Alexander, but I feel like your boss would be upset with you. So here's how I might think about this problem. Yeah, I think 7.85, that sounds more reasonable yeah, than 92%, but I see what you did. You just forgot to do the one subtraction. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So here's how I would think through the second part of this question. I would say, okay, I'm starting with a $75 item. I would like to apply one discount to that item and get to $69.11. That's how I would intuitively think about this. And then what I need to do is I need to solve for the discount price. I need to solve for D, the discount rate, I'm sorry. So first we could divide both sides by 75. Okay, so that's where our 9214 comes in, so 0.9215. And from here, I'd probably add D to both sides and then do that subtraction that was suggested in the chat. So we have D plus 0.9215 is equal to 1, and then subtracting our 0.9215. Nice. So we get a 7.85% trade discount. That would be equivalent to our 3% and 5% applied back to back. So be really careful here. This question probably will pop up potentially on test number 1 and maybe on the final exam as well. Intuitively, our brain usually wants to take 3% plus 5% and add that together to get 8%. But notice that what we're really doing with our discounts is we're in a multiplication kind of setting. So adding 3 and 5 to get 8% doesn't quite work to get that singular trade discount that we need. So just be mindful of that. It's always comes out a little bit less, I would say, usually than adding them together. Yeah, so the reason is it's just based on the formula. The formula is a multiplication formula. So when we apply our discounts, we're kind of multiplying to obtain our final answer rather than doing some kind of addition. So it's just not quite as intuitive. I find this one not quite as intuitive as some of the other examples we've done. Whenever I'm working with percents, I'm always very careful. My intuition always says add them. But in this case, we can kind of show with a little bit of algebra work that it's not going to be 8%. It's actually a little bit less. Jason, so this test for you guys will be online. So the expectation for test number 1 is that you'll have maybe some scrap paper. You can write down your work, and then Moodle accepts the final answer. So let's say, for example, we had this question on the test, right? Like this question exactly. So Moodle would have a space for you to put in the cost, and Moodle would have a space for you to put in the singular trade discount price. And it's going to mark those two as either right or wrong. What you're going to do after you're finished the test, though, is you're going to take a photo of any work that you've done and upload that to the Dropbox. And that way I can go back and give partial marks if your work looks correct for that question, but maybe you might get the final answer correct. So yeah, this is just going to be, just type the final answer into Moodle. That's going to be the style of test with your supporting written work uploaded to the Dropbox. Yes, I would like you to, after you're done the full test, you're going to scan that as a PDF and upload that so that I have it in case I need it. Yeah, no worries, JP. So if you guys do have some questions about assignment number 1 or some more questions about test number 1, you can stick around and ask those questions. I'll stay here for a few moments for you. Hey, you're welcome. Have a good one. Yeah, no worries, Maya. Take care. How many multiple choice or question for test number one? So let's bounce over to test number one so you can kind of see what the breakdown is going to look like. I'm planning to do this over the weekend to get all of this updated for you. So test one will be broken up into 3 parts. Each part, so part number 1 has 4 questions. Part number 2 has 4 questions. Part number 3 has 3 questions. Each part looks like it's going to give you 20 minutes to complete. And the Dropbox, so after you're done your 3 parts, then you can upload to the Dropbox. So I think I had a question, is the 20-minute including the upload time? No, Fiona, you'll have more time at the end of the 3 parts to upload your answers, okay? So you should have hopefully another half hour to upload your PDF, okay? Yeah, we can even look, right? Like what does the settings say? Let's take a look. I don't want to grade anything right now, but let's see. Can I open up the settings? So, oh, cool. So I basically just I had this Dropbox open. It looks like, like right away on October 6th. And it looks like I had the cutoff time at, at midnight. Yeah, I had it open for the whole day. So I'm not going to be super fast. I might, I'm going to probably dial this back a little bit. I don't think that if our test ends at 6, I don't think it's going to take you till midnight to upload the document. I don't think that that we need to have that. But I'll probably have it open for at least a half hour after the test is over, because I don't want you I feel like keeping it open for a full day leaves me open to people potentially gaming the system. So it'll be open for a little while after the test is done. It'll probably be open until 7 o'clock is kind of my guess, 6:30 or 7. But hopefully that's enough hopefully that kind of gets you into an idea of what that test is going to look like. So Verlene, yes, if you would like to solve part 1 of the assignment in your notebook and then upload that, that's okay. So part 1, you can completely solve in your notebook and upload that as a photo or a PDF. And then part 2, you can, I want you to upload this as a video. So draw a picture and then explain on the picture if you think it's going to be a surplus or shortage, and tell me why you think it will be that way. The video does not need to be long. It can be, most students, it will be 30 seconds or maybe 1 minute. You're welcome, Megan. Yeah, see you next week. Have a good weekend. So assignments, I can upload PDF or video, not to. Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's see. Can I change my role? I'm going to change my role to a student. And let's see, what does the Dropbox say? Can I upload a bunch of stuff? Okay. Hey, where do I upload stuff as a student? Yeah, what's your question there, Alexander? Sorry, I'm just kind of playing around to see if I can, doesn't look like I can upload anything. Oh, this is 21. Oh. Of course, that's not open yet. Okay. Let's try again. So let's see, assignment 1 Dropbox. Oh, that's what I want. Okay, so can I add a submission? So what happens? So can I upload? I don't know how big these are. I'm going to upload a small Zoom video and upload a text document. Okay, so it looks like I can upload more than one as a student. So you just have to keep pressing the upload button, okay? And then you should be able to upload multiple files that way. Yes, you're welcome, no worries. So Alexander, video for part 2. So we just need to cover why is surplus for, yeah, you just need to cover why you think it. So if you think it's a surplus, you need to just tell me why you think it's a surplus, and that's it. That's all you need to explain for the video portion. How do we know what format of the video will work for me? As long as you upload it as a video document. So I should be able, if I have troubles, then I will just email you, Laurel, and I will be like, hey, Laurel, send me the video in another way. Fiona, if you would like to put YouTube link in the PDF, that's okay, absolutely. Alexander, I think it's important to explain the surplus or shortage from both perspectives. So both the consumer and the producer. I think that is important. Yes, you should touch on both. Right, because if the producer wants to put more items into the market, but the consumer wants to buy more items, then we don't necessarily have a surplus, right? It's the balance between both of them that causes either the surplus or the shortage. Fantastic. So I haven't seen any other major questions pop up into the chat, so I think I'm going to end it here, everybody. And if you do have any other questions, you can always email me. We can set up a time for some office hours, either tomorrow or Friday, if you have some final questions for the assignment. Okay, guys? All right, have a good weekend, and I'll see most of you next week. Goodbye.